Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and do some more slug testing, and today we've got another very interesting combo to try out that I've got some decent hopes for, but on the other hand, it wouldn't surprise me if we saw some disappointing results from them as well, based on what we've seen from previous loadings that are similar anyway. But we do have some potential here, that's for sure, if they work the way I hope they do anyway. But as for the slugs we've got today, I brought out some more 410 loads. These ones are the Winchester Super X 410 rifled slugs. They are a 2.5 inch quarter-ounce rifled slug at about 1830 feet per second, so they're starting to get up and move on out pretty good. We have tested the Super X 3-inch quarter-ounce 410 slugs, and they were not impressive by any means. However, when we have tested other rifled slugs, seems like the 2.5 inch versions might do a little better through my particular shotgun anyway. So we'll see what these can do, and we'll definitely get a good idea on if they're any better than the 3-inch version or not. But as for the setup we're running them in, I brought out my Mossberg 500 410. It's got a 24-inch barrel on it. We're going to be running an improved cylinder for a choke, which is what the vast majority of rifled slugs recommend, so that's what we're going with. And I've got a Simmons Pro Target red dot up on top. Pretty simple, pretty basic, but it does the job well for this platform, and we'll see how this Mossberg actually likes the 2.5 inch Winchesters. So as for today's test, we're going to run it the same as we have been with these other 410 slug tests here recently. We're going to start by shooting two groups, one at 25 yards and another at 50 yards, so we can see what kind of accuracy they have. Generally with a 410 slug, 50 yards and in is the typical range that you might use something like that for, especially if you're in a hunting scenario. So that'll give us a good idea on realistic accuracy potential out of this combo. And then we'll shoot one into some water jugs and see what kind of penetration and energy dump we have out of them. It might not be as realistic as ballistics gel would be, but it will at least give us some idea of what these slugs actually do as far as terminal performance goes. And of course, all of our shots will be through a chronograph as well, although my chrono camera did have the battery die earlier on it, so we won't have any live feed for it, but I will go over the chronograph numbers for you guys so we can see what we're pushing. So let's get you guys a view of these targets. We'll start with some accuracy testing and we'll see what we can get from them. Alright, so first up we'll look through our velocities before we look at our target. The boss claim is 1830. We have a 24-inch barrel, and based on previous testing, we usually see a little bit above that boss claim. And I think that is pretty much the same story here as well. We had 2032, 2000, 1947, 1904, 1968, 1951, and 1944 for an average at 1963. So we are 133 feet per second above the boss claim, and that's getting up and moving on out for a quarter-ounce piece of lead, that's for sure. Quarter ounce is about 109 grains or so, and here are your muzzle energies for that kind of average number with a quarter-ounce 410 slug. Obviously, it's not anything over the top special, but it is plenty good enough and more than usable for a 410 slug. But that is some pretty quick velocity as well. So let's go look at our target and see if we were able to hold some good groups. Alright, so here's our target, and things got a little bit confusing, a little bit overlapped. I wasn't intending for that to be the case, but these are not the slug I'm zeroed with, even though I was trying to hold different dots on this target to keep the group separate. We'll start out at 25 yards. We had these two shots and that shot right there. So after seeing this one, I figured, well, it could have been a flyer, considering these two are just about touching. I'll give it a fourth shot just because I have a couple extra slugs today, and we hit right over here. So not anything overly impressive at 25. If we were able to keep them stacked in there, then that would be more than usable, but it's probably a case of those two close shots being a little bit more luck of the draw than anything else. At 25 yards, we were getting about a 2.39 inch group size from the farthest 2 points across, so nothing overly special, but I guess it would do the job. Now moving out to 50 yards, we hit that guy, and this guy right here. So we opened it up a little bit more, but still didn't completely lose all semblance of accuracy like we have with some other 410 rifled slugs. So that is still what I would classify as usable anyway. And it opened up to about a 3.45 inch group. So is it impressive accuracy? No, but for what it is, it's at least usable. If you zeroed with that load, it would do the job as far as accuracy goes anyway. And for those curious, this little piece up here is just a little base wad gas seal strike. It's not anything to do with the actual slugs. That's just what sits under the slug. So for accuracy's sake, really not terrible. They're not the best I've seen. Still, the Brennecke slugs do perform better than that by a good bit out of that particular shotgun combo. So not the best I've seen, but it's far from the worst I've seen as well. At least it's actually usable. But now we got to see what kind of penetration capability we've got here. I've got 6 1-gallon water jugs lined up behind me here. That is going to be plenty enough for this slug. I can guarantee you that much. We're going to enter from this end over here, and I have this middle jug as kind of an oddball one out of the group, as well as the last one. But if we get into that third jug, I will be thoroughly surprised. Usually, if I'm going to reliably deer hunt with these, I want to see at least 3 jugs worth of penetration. When it comes to 410 rifled slugs in particular, they aren't the best option out there for a deer hunt, that's for sure. Usually when they impact something, they flatten out pretty much immediately, don't get a bunch of penetration, and a lot of times they start trying to come apart into a bunch of little pieces as well. So if we get into jug number 3, I will definitely be surprised. So as for distance, I'm going to walk it back to about 20 yards or so. I do have the chronograph set up a little bit farther out in front of the muzzle as well, so we can capture our velocity and get some energy based on what we see here. So let's take our shot and see if it somehow surprises me or if it does about exactly what I think it's going to. All right, the velocity for that one was 1938, and that was probably about 5 yards or so in front of the muzzle. So that is pretty realistic velocities overall there, and we can calculate some energy based on that number as well for this particular shot. So after doing some calculations during editing here, we get 909 foot-pounds for the energy from this exact shot. So now we've got a reference point for what kind of penetration and terminal performance we actually got as well. But as for our jugs anyway, I think it did about exactly what I expected to. We have jug number 3, 4, 5, and 6 here on the table still, with no entry at all in the front of jug number 3. And our other 2 are down here. Jug number 1 is way over here, and it is obviously completely destroyed, as per usual anyway. Good centered up hit, and we completely blew through that entire jug and split it wide open. And jug number 2 is right down here, and I believe this is the back. We have no exit. It already sounds like there's a slug in there. And we have an entry that entered a little bit low left, but yep, I'm peeking down in there, and yep, you can kind of see the slug right down in there as it sits right now. It looks like it's in a couple pieces. So what do we have here? Let's dump it out and see. And it indeed looks like we've got 2 little strings of lead, and that's it. So it definitely did about what I expected it to do. 2 jugs worth of penetration, and it came apart like that. Now, would that be enough to still kill a deer? Yes, it would be, but would I trust it to reliably and consistently do it? I don't know that I would. If you hit any sort of bone at all, that slug is coming apart. It might hold together at a little longer range, you know, 30, 40 yards or so, at least a little bit better anyway. You might get a little more penetration, but I just don't know that I would fully trust it yet. And at that kind of velocities that we're getting out of these, a little 1/4 ounce piece of lead just cannot hold up to it, especially when they're pretty much hollow from the back end of them. They're just one big hollow cone more than anything. So we'll take those little pieces into the bench, we'll measure them, we'll weigh them and stuff, and get a little better look of them inside. All right, here is everything we recovered right next to an unfired slug that I cut out of one of our extra shells. You can see massive difference there for sure. It fragmented into these two pieces compared to our whole slug, but you can see that hollow point cavity, the rifling grooves on the side that smush down, which allows you to shoot these through chokes, and the big hollow cavity on the back of it here as well, which is a big reason why these flatten out and come to pieces like that, because there's pretty much nothing to the inside of them. It's just a cone of lead more than anything else. But for the weight of an actual unfired slug, we're looking at 112.4. Quarter ounce is about 109 point something, so we're actually a little bit overweight on that, which seems to be a common thing with Winchester 410 slugs. But these two pieces that we actually recovered gave us 44.2, 44.6, somewhere a little over 44 grains. So we're less than half of the slug right here, and that's about what I expected to see. But our biggest piece here is about 0.669 inches for the farthest 2 points across. It's a big difference than that slug sitting over there, that's for sure. And for those curious, the unfired slug measures 0.401. 410 is 41 caliber, i.e. 410. So we are a little bit undersized, but it's a little bit larger of a slug than some other loadings that we've tested as well. So that's a good comparison right there. All right, y'all. Well, what did you think about these results right here? I would say they're okay. They're at least serviceable. They're usable, they're manageable. In your setup, you may see slightly better or slightly worse results, but it's probably going to be something relatively similar to this overall. They're at least usable enough for accuracy purposes out to 50 yards or so. I don't know that I'd push it farther than that for anything other than just messing around on the range and seeing how far you can shoot them, I guess. But when it comes to hunting, we definitely saw the penetration capability of them here. 2 jugs, that's all you get, and that was at 20 yards. If we were any closer, that slug would have absolutely come into a bunch of pieces. Maybe if we were a little bit farther back, it would have held together a little bit better. And of course, water isn't a perfect representation of tissue, but usually it tells you a pretty decent idea of what's going on. But so far, I definitely think these 2.5-inch Super X loads have been the better performers out of the group of rifled 410 slugs that we've tested, with doing about the same when it comes to penetration capability there. You've got more velocity, so you're carrying a little more energy behind them, but the slugs are going to want to come apart easier as well with that. So maybe a little bit of a trade-off here. Would I deer hunt with them? Probably not personally, seeing the slugs come apart like that, which is about what I expected. Not saying they can't do the job, because they absolutely can, and they have done the job probably thousands of times now over the years. But if you want to give yourself as much leeway as possible, 410 slugs aren't the best ever slug load for deer hunting anyway, but that right there is why I prefer to use Brennicke's if I'm going to hunt with a 410, for deer purposes anyway. But leave all your thoughts down below. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these 2.5-inch Super X slug loads? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? Is this a combo you would ever hunt with? Or have you hunted with it? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? And maybe what other 410 slug testing do you want to see with either these loads or something else? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.